Well, hi there. We'll talk about that here in a second. But I wanted to introduce myself for just a moment. My name is Clint LOVES. I have a PhD in biology as well as a master's degree and an undergraduate degree in biology and zoology. With my wife Leisha, we run a biology outreach in Springville, Utah called Clint's Reptile Room. We are just starting our third semester of after-school clubs, homeschool groups, and university-level courses in person, and are offering our university-level classes online for the first time. I don't know if there's any space left for this semester, but you can find out at clintreptiles.com. I'm also the host of the educational YouTube channel, Clint's Reptiles, where you are right now. And for the last couple of years, we have been looking at TikTok and other platforms for short-form video content to find viral animal videos that might be able to teach us something of value, since most short-form content is little more than brain rot. And I think we've been wildly successful. So, Mr. Jason, what have we today?
I'm happy you asked, because we have a few different categories for you today. Many familiar favorites, but one all-new category that I think you're really going to enjoy. So I'll start with an old favorite, dangerous animal encounters. As always, I would like it if you could give us a brief description of what is going on and how much, if any, danger the people in the video were actually in.
Okay.
So, there's the snake. It's right there on the floor. I'm going to walk right by his face. Now, here he is. He's looking at me. There he goes. I'm going to walk by again. And I'm going to sit right in front of him. Now, did he bite me? Is he chasing me? Should I run? Probably, but I can't because you're all here. He didn't do anything except he tried to get away from me. Did you guys see that? Yeah. These are not vicious, bloodthirsty killing machines. They are not out to get you. They are terrified of you, and for good reason. For hundreds of years, all we've done is we've chopped them up into little pieces the second we see them. Of course they're going to be scared of you. Now, I am not saying to walk in front of a rattlesnake or sit next to one. I am only trying to show you that it's not going to chase after you. Now, let's find out why the rattlesnake does what it does.
Okay, that was definitely a rattlesnake. This is a rattlesnake presentation, looks to be at a school. One thing that's really cool, you know, there are a lot of snakes around here in Utah, for example, that are frequently mistaken for rattlesnakes. And not only can you look for the rattle, but just the way that they move. If you notice the way the rattlesnake has its tail up in the air, even when it's just cruising normally, that tail is cocked up. You can spot that from a long way away. You know, what this guy is doing is dangerous, but honestly also pretty amazing, and really cool. He is showing how rattlesnakes are, which honestly was even surprising to me the first time I interacted with a rattlesnake in the wild. It acted just like any other snake, which is to say it did not want to engage with me in conflict of any kind. Rattlesnakes, the reality is almost nobody dies from rattlesnake bites. And if you get into a fight with a rattlesnake, say you wanted to stomp a rattlesnake to death, there is literally nothing the rattlesnake can do to stop you. Even if it bites you, even if you die, it would be hours from then. And the rattlesnake will be long dead by that point. So all they want to do is avoid a fight with you. And that's why they have the big, elaborate threat display. Snakes, first thing they want to do, especially a snake like a rattlesnake, hold still, hope you don't notice it. If that doesn't work, run. If that doesn't work, be big, scary, and loud all the time, just trying to prevent a fight with you. And only under the most extreme circumstances will it bite, and even then, much of the time, it won't even give you any venom, because the venom's not for you. Because of this, this guy knows the behavior of these snakes. He also knows that individual snake. That snake, it didn't even appear to be rattling. That snake has been around humans before. It acts just like any of the snakes here at the reptile room would act if I did the same thing. Probably none of them would attempt to bite in that circumstance. However, it does take quite a bit of interaction to get that relationship with a rattlesnake. That's very, very dangerous. The likelihood of him getting bitten, actually very low. The consequences very high. Not gonna die, but it's really expensive, and I don't think your insurance company is too understanding when they find out what you did. That said, I think, every year there are like several thousand envenomations in the United States, and just like a handful of people die. Maybe like 5 people a year die out of 7,000 to 8,000 people that are bitten. And, conversely, dogs bite about 4.5 million Americans each year. About 800,000 of those need medical treatment, and about 43 die, most of them being children. So venomous snakes, no joke, but, we interact with a lot of dangerous animals, and we don't even think of them as being dangerous. Like I said, it's very unlikely that anything would go bad, especially on that specific day that we were watching. But the more often you do that, the more likely things will go sideways.
One of the most extraordinary characters I've ever met was Adrian the Schreiber. Adrian took us into the forest, confronted us with the gorillas, and we got charged and charged and charged again. And I think, and I'm sure, if I would have even flinched once and would have dropped the camera, or would have run or turned around, Adrian would have said, well, this is obviously not the right man to make this film.
Okay. So this is a guy interacting with gorillas. He's taking a lot of mock charges and responding with absolute calm, which is probably the best possible response you can have. Gorillas are extremely intimidating animals. They're very, very strong. They have incredible bite force in addition to just brute strength. They've got a big sagittal crest on top of the skull for their huge jaw muscles, and only the males have those because they're probably for combat more than they are for eating. This is an animal that can hurt you really, really badly, absolutely could kill you. Don't really want to kill you, and don't really want to fight you. Much like the rattlesnake, you're not something they would eat. Gorillas are very nearly pure herbivores. They probably eat a few insects, but that's about it when it comes to any animals that they would eat. There is no record of anybody ever being killed by a gorilla. So, there is actually great reason, should you ever be charged by a gorilla, to feel very confident that things are probably going to go fine as long as I just barely react to it. However, it's one thing to say that. It's another thing to see a 6 foot tall, 400 to 500 pound gorilla, maybe upwards of 600 pound gorilla with, again, these huge teeth, the sagittal crest, massive strength, charging right at you, and just to sit there and chew your leaves. Not that easy to do. Again, it could hurt you so badly if it wanted to. It won't hurt you. But still takes some intestinal fortitude, as they say. Today's video is sponsored by our friends at Raycon. And I gotta tell you, Raycon's Everyday Earbuds Classic are my favorite ones yet. The Classics are packed with awesome upgrades. Noise cancellation when I need quiet, awareness mode when I need to stay tuned in, and the battery practically lasts forever, like 32 hours with the case. It makes them easy to use in every part of my day. And I use them every day, quite a lot. I use them for all my phone calls. I use them to listen to YouTube videos while I'm getting other things done, music, while I mow the lawn. I am using these all the time, and I have been using Raycon earbuds for several years now. These are my favorite ones. Raycon gives you the kind of quality you'd expect from the big brands, but at about half the price. That's why millions of people are already using them, and with their 30-day happiness guarantee, trying them out is completely risk-free. So just click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/Clint to get 20% off site-wide. That's buyraycon.com/Clint. Big thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this video, and to you for watching and being part of our community. It means a lot. Now let's get back to the video. Big grouper. Okay, so that looks to be a spear fisherman. Probably a free diving spear fisherman based on the way that they surfaced at the end of that, which I wouldn't have been surfacing anytime soon if that was me in that situation, unless I had to. With a younger but not super young great white shark, they get larger than that, but that one was big enough it could cause you some problems. It needs to be mentioned that there are very few cases of unprovoked attacks by great white sharks ever, especially when you're not just a silhouette up on the surface that they're going to explore potentially at high speed looking like a seal or a sea lion. But approaching a shark like this, I would say probably borders on provoked status, and provoked bites happen more often than unprovoked bites. It's actually very difficult to calculate the total number of shark attacks that happen, but reporting in the United States is pretty good. And I think overall, when you look at the average year for shark attacks of all kinds, not just great white shark attacks, there are fewer than 20 attacks per year in the United States and less than 1 fatality, maybe like half a fatality per year. That said, the great white shark is probably the worst shark to have bite you. And as many of you likely know, I recently got the opportunity to swim with great white sharks for the first time. I was inside of a shark cage in South Africa at the time, which was an unbelievable experience. This experience would without question be one of the most amazing things that would ever happen to you in your entire life. I will also tell you, I love sharks, and I know it's irrational. Like, sharks may be my favorite animals on the planet. Also, slight irrational fear of them. I can tell less than most people have. When it came time to go in the cage, like, I wasn't nervous about getting in the cage, and a lot of people were. But I also, before we did it, I've seen different kinds of shark cages, and some of them you have to swim to the cage. And in the days and weeks leading up to that, I was like, it is going to take a lot of focus to not freak out in that moment where you're swimming between the boat and the cage, knowing there are great white sharks around. The reality is, they probably won't bite you. But if they do, it's a bad deal. Just going back to this experience, though, for this guy, arguably did the right thing. Hard to say. You're down and you're going to need to surface soon. Knowing where the shark is as you surface could be of great value. I don't know. I wouldn't be the one to consult about what the right thing to do is if you are spearfishing and you find a great white shark, but whew, what an experience.
Guys, check this out. We're here at the pond. Look who's over here. Oh, he's coming. It's been forever since I've seen this guy here at the pond. Oh, here he comes. You can see him working his way through the lily pads. Oh, look at him, look at him. Here he is. Come on, buddy. It's the snapping turtle, guys. I was about to say alligator snapping turtle. He's actually a common snapping turtle, and a very big one at that. Wow, check him out. He's gonna come completely out of the water. Come on, buddy. Come on. Come on. Come on, buddy. What's going on? It's been forever since I've seen you. Come on. He is coming completely out of the water. Isn't that incredible?
What a wonderful creature. So, that's a common snapping turtle. We've actually got a video coming out in the next couple of weeks about snapping turtles that we're really, really excited about, because we've done an actual study to try to uncover some of the interesting patterns we've discovered in their behavior, what might be causing them. But anyway, this turtle is very, very personable, obviously. This one probably has gotten food from this guy in the past, because this one, it looked very, very much like it was food motivated. He did identify it correctly. That's a common snapping turtle. Alligator snapping turtles, we have record of them amputating fingers. You know, he was luring it with his fingers, but that turtle looked like it was coming for food, not for interaction with him. Snapping turtles can't swallow on land, but they will grab food on land and take it to the water, and that turtle was right by the water, and it looked, you know, laser beam focused. So I'm pretty sure it was coming up for food. And why this is important. So there's no record of a common snapping turtle amputating a finger like alligator snapping turtles have done. However, when we have measured the bite forces of common snapping turtles and alligator snapping turtles, common snapping turtles have the higher measurable bite force. So anyway, there was probably no risk of death in this interaction, unless it was due to shock from having your finger potentially amputated. But definitely some danger. That said, as we've discovered, snapping turtles may not be nearly as scary as we once thought, at least if you treat them right. But more on that soon.
Okay, so our next category is also an old favorite. We have seen some dangerous, or at least potentially dangerous, encounters between humans and animals. Now I want to take a look at some animals doing some things that seem simply amazing. If you would, please give us a brief description of what this animal is, what it is doing, and if possible, give us some insight into how or why this is possible.
Okay. Okay, so that is an orca hunting what looks to be maybe black-capped night herons and egrets with bait in a captive situation. I hadn't seen that exact behavior before, but given just the range of incredible, intelligent hunting strategies that orcas use, including, you know, they'll develop a novel hunting strategy, they'll pass it on to all the others in their community. They're extremely intelligent. This isn't shocking at all. These orcas are dolphins, and dolphins are very, very, very smart animals. I'm actually not entirely convinced that they aren't smarter than we are, which is saying a lot. You know, people tend to point to technology, you know, that we've developed and how advanced our civilization is, and I get it, that those are strong pieces of evidence. That said, their brains are both larger and more complex than our brains. They lack hands for tool use, so they can't build the kind of things that humans have been able to build. That prevents them from developing a lot of technologies that we've developed. You know, and that's a real detriment to them. They can't build their own tools very effectively, and tools can allow you to build more tools and more advanced technologies. But the reality is, I mean, gosh, like if you compared what orcas are doing to what the ancestors of modern humans were doing, say 10,000 years ago, I'm just not saying there'd be a really impressive difference between the two. That was adorable. I didn't know that they could do that. It makes sense, especially given that they have a prehensile tail, but I've never seen that happen before. Of course, I've never lived anywhere where I was routine. That's not true. I have lived with opossums, but I've never seen one doing that myself. That is an opossum gathering leaves. To me, it didn't look to be a Virginia opossum, which is the one we have here in North America, but probably one of the other members of its genus. And I'm just basing that on the head markings. Though I do think that most of the other species have white ears. So I guess it could be a Virginia opossum with a strong head stripe. I pretty much just need to know where this was filmed. But I love opossums. I love them so much. But they are notoriously unintelligent mammals. Unlike the orca, their brain for a mammal is notoriously both small and uncomplex. So it is like the anti-orca brain. But to be perfectly honest, like, I have an easier time wrapping my head around what the orca was doing than this. I had to watch this several times. I'm like, okay, I guess I see how this works. So, picks it up, passes it from their front hands. They got like they got hands. One set of hands, the other set of hands, stick it in the tail, which they had laying on the ground, and then wrap it around. Super cool. Didn't know they could do that. Love them so much. There it goes. All right, so that is one of my very favorite ray fin fishes. That is the slingjaw wrasse. Kind of like Jack Skellington. At what it does, it is the best. The skill of theirs, you saw the way it can protrude its jaws forward, that's actually not an unusual ability for bony fishes to have. In fact, lots of fishes have this. What they're doing, so there's kind of two good ways to catch fish with your face. One of them is to have long, skinny jaws, like a gharial or a dolphin, a gar fish, especially needlefishes, which I guess are not gar. But have these long, skinny jaws and come up next to fish and do a quick swipe to the side, because it's really difficult to get speed up and catch them by moving your whole body forward. But just darting your head off to the side, you can do that more quickly than they can move. And the longer the jaws, the farther that they can go and not get away. So that's one way. But you'll notice most fish-eating fishes do not have jaws like that at all. What they have is a version that looks a lot like the sling-jawed wrasse when its jaws are closed, and looks like a minor form of the sling-jawed wrasse when its jaws are open, which means they can protrude forward. The big thing is they're taking a very small space and they're suddenly turning it into a very large space. And this creates an empty space where there was no space before, generates a vacuum, and they suck things in. This is called suction feeding. And that is actually how most bony fishes eat. But the sling-jawed wrasse and probably the goblin shark are kind of the most extreme examples of this feeding strategy, suction feeding. We've actually got a whole video on suction feeding and just in general how to get food into your face and why mata turtles make me so happy. But anyway, that's the sling-jawed wrasse. That is so cool. So that is one of the coolest sharks on the planet. That is the thresher shark. And what it was doing is, I guess, kind of a third way that one might catch fish. And threshers aren't the only ones that do this. A lot of dolphins do this too, but is to stun the fish somehow. And the way that the thresher shark does it is by whipping fish with the gigantic top lobe that they have to their caudal fin. Unbelievable. And I know that they do this. It's actually pretty rare to see footage of it. These I don't think we've ever kept them successfully in an aquarium or anything like that. And so the only way to see them at all is to see them in the wild. The only way to see this behavior is to see them do it in the wild, which is a whole other thing. That's astounding. Thresher sharks are very close relatives of great whites, and there are 3 total species. That was a little blurry when it got close enough. I couldn't make out exactly which one it is, but if you want to know all 3 species or what the other sharks are that are closely related to great whites, totally check that video out pretty soon.
Okay, we have one more familiar category today, but it seems to be everyone's favorite. So we had to have some mystery animal identification.
Hooray! It's a lumpfish. I actually just discovered lumpfishes within the last few months because I've been keeping a nano saltwater tank. There are big lumpfish, but many stay really tiny, like less than an inch long. They have modified pelvic fins. That's what that big disc was on its belly, and they are basically like a suction cup they can use to hold on to all kinds of things. You could see when it was swimming that they use their pectoral fins for lift, and this always pleases me. Like you know I love puffers because they use their pectoral fins to propel themselves. Lumpfishes do not have a swim bladder, so in order to get off the ground at all, they need some propulsion. They are, it is my understanding, very difficult to keep. For one thing, they need it very cold, and they have a lot of other very specific care requirements. So if you're like, ooh, I should get one as a pet, probably not, but I wish, because they're so great. Okay, that's a good one. So, right at first I thought that looked like a cuttlefish, but that is not what that is at all. That is a slipper lobster. I love slipper lobsters, and this actually led to a really cool experience a couple of years ago. I was at Epcot Center at Walt Disney World, and there was a slipper lobster just like doing laps in this tank. And so I started watching this slipper lobster go around, and there was a kid who was just watching it too. And I think he asked me if I knew what it was, and I said it's a slipper lobster, and he seemed very surprised about that. That I knew, not because he knew what it was, but his mom then told me that he loves to watch the slipper lobster, and it very rarely is that active. But he loves the slipper lobster, but never finds anybody who knows about it. So she's like, how do you know about this? And I said, well, you know, I really like animals, and I'm a biologist. And she was sitting there for a second, and she goes, wait a second, are you on YouTube? I said, yeah. And she's like, oh my gosh, we were just watching you today. And it was crazy too, because on that same trip, like there was another guy when we were in the Magic Kingdom, I think, and he had this cool sweatshirt on. I can't remember what the deal was, but anyway, I'm a little broken, so I saw a really cool sweatshirt. I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy about this cool sweatshirt. It drives Jason insane. But so I went up and talked to this guy, and I've been talking to him for a little bit about his cool sweatshirt. And then he's like, by the way, I really love your videos. And like having it happen multiple times in one trip where I started conversations with people and then found out that they were fans of the channel led me to wonder, like, how many of you guys are out there that see us around and, you know, are intimidated, I guess, from saying hi. By all means, like if you see us out in nature, especially Jason.
Us?
Yep,
Us is the wrong word.
yep. We love to meet you guys, though, so don't hesitate. But back to slipper lobsters. Slipper lobsters are weird lobsters. I think if you think of lobster defenses, you probably think of claws. And if you've ever like interacted with lobsters or crayfishes, you probably know about that little tail flip that they can do to get away. These guys can't do either of those things. They don't do the tail flip. I think they're just lacking the neurons to do it. And the claw-looking structures, there's kind of big rounded things out front, not claws. Those are their antennae. They got these big flat claw-looking antennae. They're more closely related to spiny lobsters than they are to true lobsters. But the reality is spiny lobsters and slipper lobsters are both fairly closely related to true lobsters. They're just not as closely related to true lobsters as true lobsters are to, say, crayfishes. But if crayfish are lobsters, and a few other groups as well, then slipper lobsters can potentially be considered lobsters as well. They're closer to lobsters than to crayfish. Okay, so there were 3 species of deuterostomes in that video, all hanging out together on the seafloor. There was a sea urchin, which I could see occasionally. There were a number of brittle stars. I don't know if this video is in real time or if this was sped up a little, but that brittle star was making time. And there was probably the animal that I think you're asking about is the tripod fish, which is a really cool fish. They stand on elongated pelvic and caudal fins. So if you look, it's the pelvic fins that are really long, and then the lower lobe of their caudal fin. And then in this species, the pectoral fins have been modified essentially into kind of a combination of 2 things. They're like antennae and a funnel. Not all, I think all the species have pectoral fins, but not all of them have the big antennae funnel pectoral fins. So that would help identify exactly which species this is. Super cool though. In general, they either have no eyes or they have large eyes with no lenses. So kind of, in no case are they seeing well. But it's my understanding that right on the ocean floor, there isn't very much like wave action movement. The water's not moving very much. But if you get up a little bit, there's a little bit of a current there. And, these guys are in the deep ocean. It's usually dark. And they're just waiting there, often with those long antennas, waiting to detect something floating by. And then they grab it. The genus that this one comes from, I'm pretty sure, are simultaneous hermaphrodites, which means they're both male and female at the same time, unlike serial hermaphrodites like clownfishes, for example. But these guys are simultaneous hermaphrodites, which I believe gives them the ability to self-fertilize their own eggs like a plant. So that's pretty cool. It'd be interesting. You get a lot more cases of chromosome and whole genome duplications in plants than you do in other animals, because if you duplicate all your chromosomes a lot of times, or even just one chromosome, you become sexually incompatible with other members of your species. This is a problem that you run into like with horses and donkeys, is they've got a different number of chromosomes, and so it's hard to find a compatible mate. However, if you can self-fertilize, like many plants can, you can duplicate your genome fairly often, which I think that the strawberries that we tend to eat are octoploid. So they've experienced multiple whole genome duplications in order to get like that. I don't know if that's more common in tripod fishes or not. There aren't that many of them, but that would be such a cool study. So if you're looking for like a rockin' PhD project, that'd be a good one. So that is a Chetjepi turtle, which they have a very distinct shape from other marine turtles. They lack the scutes that you'll see on most sea turtles, and they also lack the ridges that you'd see on leatherbacks. Plus, they walk on the bottom instead of using flippers. You can tell, though, that it is a tetrapod. It has a long paddle tail, which is really, that you can see it's using side to side to assist in giving thrust while swimming. That is unlike anything you'll see in any other turtle. There are other turtles like snapping turtles and big-headed turtles that have long tails, but those seem to be more related to climbing and probably a controlled descent than they are to swimming ability like this. With this species, if you just use the first initial in the word turtle, it becomes more obvious what it is. It's a Chetjepi. It's not real. We are living in a time where soon, if you don't really know your animals, it will be almost impossible to distinguish them, at least real ones from fake ones. Which is why Clint Reptile Academy is now online. And our first class will be animal diversity, because honestly, that looked dang good. That looked dang good. And I mean, it is only because I know what the other possibilities are, and none of them are like that I can say with pretty high degree of confidence that's not a real turtle. Okay, if you've been watching these videos, there's probably a pretty good chance you can identify this one, because this is one we have seen before. Not this video, but this is a blanket octopus. This one, of course, is female, and you can tell that partially because they're the ones with the big trailing blankets, but also because females are as much as 10,000 times larger than males, which are less than an inch long. Just some cool facts about them. So these guys are immune to the venom of man-o'-wars. So, they might lose to them in a Who Would Win book, but that's neither here nor there. Males and juvenile females will both use the tentacles of man-o'-wars as offensive weapons. So they rip them off and use them to fight other things. So that would be interesting in subsequent rounds after they've probably lost to the man-o'-war, but you know how it is. And again, it is just the females that have that cool membrane between their arm that they unfurl, I think largely as a defensive display, but probably at other times as well. Super cool.
Oh. This is definitely AI.
Okay. So that is called a granulated starfish. And yes, it is real. Though I will say my wife Alicia did not believe me that that was real when I told her about them. They are the only member of their genus. So what you're seeing at the end there of each arm, they've got rounded arm tips, and the lateral canal kind of exposes itself a little bit there at the end. But sea stars don't look much like stars when their arms don't come to a point. I think we definitely need to make a video on echinoderms. Just take a moment just to mention something to our patrons on Patreon, which is we had a few suggestions for common names for this starfish, and we also wanted to hear yours. So if you want to find out what those are, hop on over and check out the Patreon extras video this week. And if you're not already one of our patrons on Patreon and you'd like to see this yourself, please join us.
Clint.
Yes.
Now that our video is demonetized, shall we go on?
Why not? We got nothing to lose now.
Our final category is an all-new one, but one that I think you're going to enjoy, because sometimes you see something that totally changes your perspective about that thing. Like the video that we put out last year about snapping turtles, or more so, the one that we have coming out in a couple weeks. But these videos, I think, show us some things about these animals that, at least for me, totally changed my perspective about these animals. I'd love to hear your thoughts about them.
Okay. Wow. Wow. So that is what you call a pygmy right whale, which is the smallest of all baleen whales. It is, interestingly, more closely related to rorquals, which are things like blue whales and minke whales and fin whales and things like that, than they are to right whales, and they look like it, to be perfectly honest. Though these are the smallest of all baleen whales, as adults, they're still fairly large. This one, to me, it looked like it was probably around or less than about 3 meters long, which I think they're like maybe like a meter and a half or 2 meters when they're born. I think more like 2 meters. But anyway, adults are more like 6 meters long, so they do get bigger than that. But it's still incredible to see a baleen whale that's like not much bigger than a person. That's just absolutely astounding to see. We did talk about these guys quite a bit in our video on whales, which came out a while ago, but it's stinking rad video, so I strongly encourage you to check that out. But yeah, it's really neat to see some like something in there for perspective with that person there. You know, even though that person's in the foreground, and so there's a little bit of forced perspective, makes it look smaller than it is, but it still gives you some concept of how big that whale is, and it is really small for what it is. That's so cool.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you're getting curious.
Okay, so that is the opposite of what we just saw. Again, it's really nice to see it with objects for size reference. But that is a blue whale. And forced perspective is still working against how big that was because the people are in the foreground. I think you can tell that thing is enormous. Blue whales get to be 100 feet long, 200 tons. Like when you see them off in the distance or you see them just alone in a shot, it's really hard to understand what that looks like. And it's really, I mean, it's hard to understand just how big that is. I just saw my first rorqual when we were in South Africa recently. We saw a bride's whale at some distance. You know, you can tell it's big, but can't tell exactly how big. I was really close to a sperm whale one time. That gave me a pretty good feel for it. But I also, while in South Africa, I got to see a rorqual skull up close. I don't know that it was a blue whale, but it's incredibly large. And, you know, the blue whale is not only the largest baleen whale, it's the largest animal alive and perhaps the largest animal ever to exist on this planet. So incredible.
Francisco, the gaboon viper, is about to show you what they're most known for. Having the longest fangs of any venomous snake on Earth. Up to 2 inches long. Wow.
Okay, so that is specifically a West African gaboon viper, Bitis rhinoceros. You can tell because it has those big scales on its nose, those rostral scales that Bitis gabonica, I don't know if you'd call it East African gaboon viper or the true gaboon viper, doesn't have. But they have the longest fangs, I think, period, for any snake. They're super long. I love gaboon vipers, so I got a lot of gaboon viper stuff. Let's see. There's a gaboon viper skull. Got this amazing model of a gaboon viper. What I don't have is an actual gaboon viper, because a bite from a gaboon viper is pretty catastrophic. but I love them. They're incredible. The fangs are really long. I mean, you can see that from this skull. This isn't even necessarily as big as gaboon vipers get, but these fangs are just absolutely colossal. I actually was just around a gaboon viper yesterday, and we found a big fang that had just been shed and passed through the digestive tract and came out there in the enclosure. You got to be careful about those if you keep them. That's a threat that people don't often think about. But gigantic fangs. But that isn't even the coolest part of this video, in my opinion. And so I want to let's take a look at another part real
Francisco, the gaboon viper, is about to show you what they're most known for. Having the longest fangs of any venomous snake on Earth. Up to 2 inches long. Wow.
quick. Right there. I'm going to go a little further. Oh, yeah, let's see. There it is. Okay, so let's pause it right here and just talk about this. There is so much to see here. The first thing that we could see really obviously was how the fangs fold. These fangs are so long that if they were fixed, like the fangs of most elapid snakes, they would just go right through the bottom jaw or hang out like saber teeth when the jaw was closed. And so they fold down, and that allows them not only to fit in the mouth with the mouth closed, but it also allows them to shoot kind of forward. So it's much easier for them to envenomate something. They don't have to get their whole mouth around it, just kind of almost jab it with the fangs. Truly incredible. It also allows them to move them and manipulate them when they're injecting, trying to get a better hold or to help swallowing things. So there's a lot of advantages to those folding fangs. But even more exciting than that, I want to point your attention to these giant holes in the roof of the mouth. These really big holes here are not the Jacobson's organ. The Jacobson's organ is actually kind of halfway between those giant holes and the front lip of the snake, much, much smaller. And the Jacobson's organ is a super cool thing. So that it is extremely chemosensitive. Okay, so it detects chemical signals, and they stick their forked tongue out. The fork is important also. They stick the forked tongue out, and then when they close their mouth, they stick the forked tongue up into the Jacobson's organ, essentially to analyze what has been picked up by the tongue. So the tongue itself is really not the thing doing the majority of this. It doesn't really do the smelling. It picks up particles and sticks them into that Jacobson's organ. And a lot of times when you see an open mouth like this, people will think that that giant hole is the Jacobson's organ. It's actually the little hole. And if you look in the tongue, or in the mouth itself, you'll notice that the tongue, where is it? And the reason that you can't see it is because it goes into a little pocket in the bottom jaw underneath this big tube that we'll talk about here in a second on the bottom, which is called the glottis. And so it just kind of slides down into a little protective pocket when not in use inside of the mouth. The glottis is that big tube, and you can see it opens up sometimes. You can see that the glottis can open, and what that is that's the far end of the windpipe of the snake, and they can protrude that far forward, so when they're swallowing a big meal, they can still kind of snorkel around it, and so they can breathe even when they've got something large in their mouth. You can see they can open it and close it, so that's a really cool ability. But it has something important to do with these giant holes in the upper jaw. Those giant holes are the back sides of its nostrils. When the mouth is closed, it plugs the glottis in right there, and that's how it can breathe through its nose, which is amazing. And honestly, something I originally learned from Nipper the snapping turtle, because snapping turtles have a really similar arrangement. They've got a hole in their tongue that they can open up, and they press it to two holes in the roof of their mouth so they can snorkel through their own nostrils. First time I saw a snake open its mouth after noticing this about snapping turtles, and I went, oh, same setup. Incredible. The other thing that you can see really clearly in this video is the way that the bottom jaw can move independently. The two sides are not fused at the front, and this is actually the thing that allows snakes to swallow very large prey. They can't unhinge their jaw or anything, but they can move their bottom jaw independently. You can actually see that really well on this skull. that the jaw is not connected. And so that allows them to walk over prey and spread it out wide like this. Awesome. Nice enough not to step on you. I will tell you, we should have had this in the dangerous animal encounters. It definitely gives you some perspective on how big they are. And having recently been on safari, I was up around some big bull elephants like this, and they're impressively enormous. But I can tell you, after spending time around people that live among elephants, specifically someone who is a first responder to elephant-related incidents, elephants are much scarier than I realized. African elephants specifically. Not to say that all elephants can't be scary, but African elephants are so scary. For starters, absolutely look at how big it is. This is a male. He's not clearly in must, which, you know, is when they're really hormonal, and that's a very scary time to be around him. I don't know what the story is with this one. I would never ever recommend that you walk up to an African elephant, or any elephant, but especially an African elephant like this. And I'll tell you what I learned. Okay, so I'm going to make a video about this experience soon. So I'll probably go deeper into detail there. But I will tell you, in situations where somebody upset an elephant, which can be done just because you surprise them a little bit, every incident I heard about involved the elephant killing you. And killing you in a much, much more violent way than I ever would have imagined. So anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. I'll tell you more about that when we do our video about safari. Terrifying. You know, and if you think about it, like, they don't tend to use African elephants in zoos. Well, they'll be in zoos sometimes. They don't tend to use them in circuses. They don't tend to, like, you very rarely see anybody riding an African elephant. They're a much more intense animal than Asian elephants are. And that's not to say that Asian elephants can't be very, very intimidating and dangerous. African elephants are on a whole other level. Incredible animals, though.
The caption on this video reads, "Mom and baby chimpanzee reunite after complications at birth."
Good job, Holly. What a good girl.
That's such a sweet video. Earlier I was talking about how similar our society is to chimpanzee society, and you see it, you know. Chimpanzees, for as scary of an animal as they are, I mean, they're nowhere near as scary as humans. They are. And, you know, people often get a little bit defensive when you talk about us being close relatives to chimpanzees, but it's I mean, if you had to find out that you were closely related to something else, some other animal on this planet, like, is there something you see more of ourselves in than these? I doubt it. However, just for your information, these are our closest living relatives, chimpanzees and bonobos, but they're not the closest relatives we've ever had on this planet. And we do have a video coming out later this year, so now would be a good time to click that little bell if you haven't already. I'm curious what you guys thought of this new segment, but I did like it. I found it really impactful. Anyway, as always, like and subscribe. We hope to see you real soon. And for the last couple of years, we have been looking at TikTok and other platforms for short-form video content trying to get that road closed down for I don't know how long. Just during filming it. You like that one?
Terrifying. I gotta say, humans probably are a little bit meatier than herons. I don't know why they haven't eaten us yet.
Yeah. My favorite thing about their hunting is, you know, if you're being hunted by a wolf, it's not sitting there going,
Do it, I dare you.
like that was the most inviting look an animal can have on its face. Is the look that orca had. All right.
Free Willy.
You are Will.
Wait, you want one, but you also want to free it?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, yeah.
Captivate Willy!
Captivate Willy.
Captivate Willy!
Unfree Willy!
We don't need to mutate or breed orcas, Jason. We just need a hacksaw.
Oh.
What? Sorry, what?
To get the brain out of the orca,
Oh, wow.
squish it in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the brain is many times the size of the entire opossum. They are just the best. That's like everything I love in a ray finned fish.
He just latches right onto the rock.
If you see us out in nature, especially Jason.
Us?
Yep. Mostly Jason.
Us is the wrong word.
Yep. You're our kind of people. A combination of two things. They're like antennae and a funnel.
Speaking of function,
Mm-hmm. What's your
the
function?
fish was acting like a brittle star, and the brittle star was acting like a fish. That's funny.
Thank you for doing this. That is funny.
Deep thoughts with Will. It's a chat GPT. You like that one, Jason?
I like it. It's a very French. ChatGPT.
Jason,
We can't show this.
it's going on the thumbnail.
This is for kids. This is for kids.
It's going on the thumbnail.
What else? What else do you guys want to know? Jason is dying.
Convergent evolution?
The Pentacock starfish. Just say it with a straight face. What is that? It's a Pentacock.
Clearly.
It's like a Chetjeppy turtle. Yeah. Thumbnail. Just.
We're gonna get demonetized.
Do you think?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we'll try to get it up there early. They would have to remonetize it.
Is it worth it?
Yes. I don't know how well they screen thumbnails either.
Okay. I don't think they screen them up front.
Yeah.
I think it gets
People would
recorded.
flag it.
Yeah.
We'd show the full Pentacock. Like we would just,
You wouldn't drop it.
yeah.
It would be a mono cock.
That could create some problems.
Jeez.
You could have little sensor boxes on.
It so looks like a prompt that you put into AI. Like, what the heck?
Make a starfish accept.
Uh,
You're still thinking about it?
it popped up. It was the
They do that.
Oh, jeez.
Hope we never outgrow this. Wouldn't that be a shame?